we remember that the interest of the majority, the people of this country, must be foremost and first in our minds. Guide that our deliberations are done not just in the interest of the people, but with due respect to each other and in an atmosphere that will endure to the benefit of all of us as a nation. These and all other mercies we ask in your precious name. Amen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, today we're going to deal with the matter of the first supplementary, but just to indicate that last week we were supposed to have a meeting with the Ministry of Finance and at the time Tourism to deal with some issues with the care package. When I say care package, I don't mean the packages being handed out to persons in that context, but that the program with the different compassionate grants, set cash, best cash, etc. I'm going to suggest, members, certainly from my perspective, there are some questions that I'd like to ask the Ministry of Finance with regard to that. They don't need to give a comprehensive answer today, but we need to put some of that on the record because it is out there as a real issue. And I suggest that we lead off with the issue with the Ministry of Finance, that we lead off with the issue of just asking them how the compassionate grants are going and get some clarifications for those members that may have a problem there. So I'll shortly be inviting them in. Before I invite in the Ministry of Finance though, and I intend to ask the question as well, we over the last few weeks we have invited by giving guidance from the Ministry of Finance, any of the COVID related expenditures, we had asked for those expenditures to be brought, and given that we have had meetings with the Ministry of Labor, we have had meetings at Ministry of Local Government, I think, we've had the Ministry of Health, so we have gone through those. However, there is one that is in the media at present, which is giving me some concern, and I think as a committee we have got to look into it, and it may have come last week if we had had the meeting. And I refer to the situation that now exists in St. Anne's. The Municipal Council of St. Anne has received somewhere in the region of $46 million for the cleanup of the town. And there is a disagreement at the council level over the expenditure and how the funds have been accounted for. It appears, or we have been informed, that the funds were given to St. Anne's Bay Municipal Council through the Tourism Enhancement Fund for the cleanup of the town. Now, there would be some questions that would arise. Why would you give St. Anne's Bay and not, for example, Montego Bay, Negril, Port Antonio, and Kingston? Or is it a part of a broader program? If so, why is it that when we wrote to the Ministry of Tourism, we were not informed of any other expenditure other than St. Anne's Bay and a proposed expenditure for Falmouth, but no other expenditures? So I think there are enough questions to be answered that this committee should invite the Ministry of Local Government and representatives from the St. Anne Municipal Council to have a discussion about that, which was termed as an emergency cleanup for COVID. So I put that to the members.
Chairman,
Member Jackson.
I'm just curious, is that part of the reopening of the tourism industry? Since it's part of the...
I may not be the right person to ask. No, but what I would say is that if you are, look, and let us all be very clear of where we want. We are in the middle of a crisis in Jamaica, and as I have indicated, certainly as a member of parliament and my colleagues in the opposition, and I think private sector, we are all willing to work together to allow for us to respond quickly to any eventuality that may arise out of this crisis. But it cannot be a free-for-all. And where we see things that raise a red flag, we have to, as a committee, look at it and nip these things in the bud if there is something to nip. But certainly we have to provide oversight to ensure transparency. Now, the issue that, as I said before, there is what appears to be a one-off payment to the St. Anne's Municipal Council. We have not been advised of any other municipal council being so blessed. And quite frankly, one has to look into it and see whether it is part of a broader policy initiative or how this decision was arrived at. I think, and furthermore, $45 million, $46 million is a lot of money, and therefore we need to find out what it was spent on and how the contractual arrangements were made, because quite frankly, we have to ensure, as a primary concern of this committee, that we get money, that we get value for money.
Chairman,
Member
Chairman,
Campbell.
whilst I understand, I'm not sure where on the agenda this particular, and have we been given copies of these documents as to the expenditure? Because I don't see it here.
Which expenditure?
You're mentioning that there was an expenditure of $46 million.
When we were to have taken tourism last week, as part of it, we had seen one of the issues was that there was an expenditure for the St. Anne's Municipal Council. That was in the documents that we would have seen if we had done tourism last week. What I'm saying is subsequent to that, events have overtaken because it has now become a public matter. It is playing out in the media. And I'm just saying that in all of these emergency expenditures, which is what we have been following.
Very well, Chairman. So can we, at the appropriate time, because we seem to have skipped a number of the items.
No, all I've done is at this item, I have simply indicated to my members that it is our intention to invite them to the next meeting, and all I would encourage you to do is say aye.
Before you invite the aye, Chairman, with your permission, and you have my aye already, but yes. It's interesting.
I wondered why you were stumbling in.
With his permission.
Yes, go ahead, Member Jackson.
The reason why I stumbled in before you asked for the aye, Chairman, is another matter that has come to my attention, because I believe the point you made is in the context of those TEF expenditure is part of the whole COVID reality that we face, and which is cast, which is cause for the supplementary budget to be recast. And since you are going to be having the St. Anne Parish Council at the next sitting for the reasons you just outlined, I would also want them, when they come, to provide reasons why the council has invested over $100,000 to put in a charging port for hybrid motor vehicles, which from the information I have will increase the monthly electricity bill from $30,000 to $100,000 per month. So I would like that to be included with what they address when they come here next week.
Pardon, that's a what? a charging port?
Yes, for hybrid motor vehicles. And I
Okay.
say that because I am not aware. I remember in one PAC exercise, when we were dealing with the motor vehicles for the police, we asked if hybrid motor vehicles were being considered as part of the fleet. So I don't know if this is an initial step in that direction. But that again, the parish council is not a police station.
That's easy to answer. Member Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize that we have moved away from the agenda. And
I'm about to move directly back to it.
And discussing a matter that is not on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, but you gave an explanation.
Yeah.
And whilst you have done so, I would hasten to say to you, why not add the Hanover Parish Council and the Manchester Parish Council in the same breath so that we can get some other answers to other stuff?
Simple, Member Clark, simple. Because what we're dealing with is emergency expenditures
Yes.
for COVID. And I'm saying to you, the only expenditure. The only expenditure.
I don't think my colleague, sorry, Mr. Chairman, my colleague mentioned the 100,000 implementation of the hybrid.
Yes.
And I don't see where that has anything to do with COVID. So in the same breath that you are taking that.
I take your point. But
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order. I
Chairman,
only raised it because you had indicated we're going to invite the St. Anne Parish Council.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sure they would be so alerted that the question may be raised when they come. But all right, but members, I would.
But I just want to make the point, Chair, because it happened when the Ministry of Local Government came to the PAAC and other agencies, ministries, is that the reports that they gave us was limited only to what was mentioned in the Minister of Finance's COVID response being allotted from the Ministry of Finance. And in our questioning of the Ministry of Local Government, recognized that there were more expenditures, even if it was from the ministry's budget itself, but there were more expenditures being made in dealing with the response to COVID. Looking back at the report that was given to us from the TF on the COVID that we are supposed to be meeting, that 40 how much million to the ministry has not even been mentioned in the report as an expenditure. Yeah? So one of the things that we need to ask for the ministries and agencies that's coming to us in dealing with the whole COVID response is to give us the additional expenditures, even from their own budget, of what it is that they're expending on the response to COVID.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Because, and just to add to what you're saying, those expenditures that have been...
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, you just made the statement that you're going hastily back to the agenda. Can we take the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and what is being discussed now? If you want to take it on a new business, Mr. Chairman, then we can do so. But or any other business. But let us hastily, as you say, go back to the agenda.
But just with all due respect to the member, no, Chairman, with all due respect to the member, because when you look at what came to us from the Ministry of Local Government, came with $150 million expenditure. When we were done, we were at $526 million in COVID. So all I'm just saying is that
Chairman, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, member.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
All I'm saying is that when the
Mr.
reports
Chairman,
are
on a
coming,
point of order,
if
Mr.
it is
Chairman,
that we're going to be overlooking the response,
can you rule, sir?
Because you have
Mr. Chairman,
$1 million inside here for cleaning up town centers.
Can you rule, sir? I am asking for a point of order.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I am not
and
against...
your point of order is based on...
I'm not against...
Member Clark,
so let me just make the point, and then if you want to
members,
just say what you want to say,
members,
but I mean...
one at a time. Member Phillips, please. Could I hear what your point of order is, sir?
And my point of order is, Mr. Chairman, what the member is now bringing to fore can be discussed under any other business. Mr. Chairman, all I'm asking you is to get back formality to the meeting. We are jumping from one place to the next. Mr. Chairman, sir.
Member Clark,
with all
please.
due respect,
No,
please let us
Clark,
go to the agenda.
Member Clark, please. Member, one at a time, please. I think the point that's being made is a very valid point from Minister.
And so,
please,
Mr. Chairman, let us go to the
Member
agenda,
Clark, you
and
will allow
therefore
me
we
to
can
finish.
take it.
Member Clark, you will allow me to finish, please. I am simply saying, Member Clark, I am simply saying that what we require from this committee is when we are asking for the emergency expenditures that we get a proper list of all the expenditures, because we have seen some of these ministries. So I know it. Absolutely, and I am. Member Campbell, do you have a difficulty? Member Campbell, do you have a difficulty with us trying to elicit the proper information? Yes. All right. So. No, there's no informality. Yes. Are you both finished? Thank you. No, please. I am simply saying that at the end of the day, we are going to require that all the information be brought to the committee. As simple as that. Member Phillips, you had a specific request with regard to that?
Just so that we can get a complete look at the expenditures for COVID response by
No,
each.
but was there a specific one you were dealing with?
Not necessarily, just an overall.
All right.
Just
okay.
an overall.
Good. All right. Members, on that note, on that very fraternal note, can we invite the Ministry of Finance and Public Service in? Are you? Evans, how are you?
I'll go behind John. I'll go behind.
FS, morning. Welcome to you and the team, Jarrett and the rest of the team. There are a few things before, as I indicated to members before we jump into the first supplementary budget, there is an issue I would like to raise with regard to the care program in its broad sense. I think it's a correct term that includes the compassionate grants, the best cash, set cash, etc. The entire program. That's a care program, right? There are a few questions that I would like to ask on them, just a set. But before I go there, maybe I should first invite you to introduce your team, and then we will proceed to that, and then afterwards we'll turn to the supplementary budget.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This morning we have from the Ministry of Finance, Mrs. Loris Jarrett, Deputy Financial Secretary, Public Expenditure Division, Mr. Courtney Williams, Deputy Financial Secretary, Technical Coordination, Ms. Diane Black, Deputy Financial Secretary, Economic Management Division, Mr. Trevor Anderson, Senior Director, Fiscal Policy Management Branch, Alicia Bish, Senior Director, Public Expenditure Division, Public Enterprises Division, Ms. Maria Thompson-Walters, Executive Director of the Transformation Implementation Unit, Cheryl James of the Public Enterprises Division, and Sonia Dresicki from the Debt Management Branch.
Okay, thank you. All right, FS, I have a grave concern, and maybe other members would have some, and we can see whether we can probably get some clarification from it or determine a way forward or how we'll deal with it. But it has specifically to do with the set cash and best cash programs, which are being run by the government. Now, I will say to you that over the last 2 to 3 weeks, I have been besieged by calls from persons in the sector, specifically in my case, the tourism sector, although some parts of it are wider, I think the set cash. But besieged by just not being able to access it properly, having difficulty. These are workers on the ground who are calling me, and I see the member indicating having the same concern, really concerned about how the program is operating. It was to have given a payment in April, May, and June. We're now in May, reaching the end of May. And many of them are still being told they're not on the program, that they don't qualify, where patently in their minds they do qualify. And in a lot of cases are being told that there are problems with the employers and the employers having to utilize the P45 forms. And I'm only giving you in a concise manner because I'm sure other members may give their ideas on what has happened. In consultation with the sector, persons in the industry, I understand they have been besieged with problems. That a program which, and let me just say from the onset, I for one, and I think most of the sector, very happy that there was a program being put in place to help those who in this difficult time, members in the tourism sector especially, and they would get something for a couple of months. So it was with the best of intentions. And obviously, the issue of the minister or the ministry putting in place certain safeguards to ensure that it was done in an organized fashion, we are fully in agreement. But I have gotten a list of complaints out of the sector. Please, let me...
Is that representative here this morning?
The financial secretary is here, Mr. Campbell, who's in charge.
We have been told that we have a deputy financial secretary there's one person who's in charge of the debt servicing unit, and I'm asking specifically as to whether that representative who is in charge of the unit which deals with those matters, if that representative is here.
All right, so the responsibility lies with me, sir. However, the person who has been charged with managing the program on behalf of the Ministry of Finance is in fact here. That's Mr. Courtney Williams, who is sitting beside me.
Thank you. FS. FS, and I don't want to go into all the details, but just to give you an example, the system was opened on April 9th for all applications. Employers' ability to apply for best cash and upload the P45 forms for the set applicants' verification was from the onset of the system opening date being rejected. The Ministry of Finance was advised, and they indicated that the employers should try again on April the 16th. When that did not work, they were told to try again on April the 22nd. By that time, this is when set cash persons were expecting their payout already. There were problems with the uploading of the form. The government were told that all employees who lost their jobs or were laid off by March 10th, 2020 should apply to set. Look, I don't want, my understanding is that all of these concerns that I'm raising have been made to the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Tourism, and that, quite frankly, in a nutshell, there have been difficulty uploading the P45 forms. They've had to make changes with it. They're still fraught with difficulties with it. And at the root of it, let me tell you what the problem is. We all here represent the workers in the sector. And you cannot have a situation where 2 months after this thing has been announced and put in place, you have a situation where you have workers that don't know where they stand, where they know they qualify, they can't seem to get the information. There's a element of distrust that's now being engendered because of problems with the system. And I think it's important for the Ministry of Finance to clarify in your words what is happening with this program. And quite frankly, from my point of view, I think one of the most important things is to have an appeals desk, to have some methodology of explaining to workers what is happening every step of the way. Because quite frankly, once you have announced this program, these are workers who work and make a contribution to the government. It's not a favor. A decision has been taken for them to receive this. Therefore, it needs to be done in an orderly fashion. And what is happening now, there seems to be a real problem, and it is now in this light of a sense of things not working in an orderly fashion, it is becoming a problem for the industry. So I would like to ask, are you aware of this problem, and what is being done to resolve it?
Okay, sir. Yes, when we...
A microphone, please.
When we started the program, we did, in particular reference to the set, indicate that we intended to make 3 payments, April, May, and June.
Pardon? I think we're not hearing you so clearly.
We indicated that we would make 3 payments, April, May, and June.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we were not able to meet the April deadline because of a number of issues. Among the issues,
was this communicated in a fulsome manner as to why and how that happened? Because for a lot of people, they never got the payment because things were not uploaded and there were problems in the system. So did you indicate that there was a problem at the ministry and that the payment was not going to be made at the end of April?
We made some indication. I wouldn't say that the indication explained every single reason why the payments weren't being made, but there was an indication that the payments in April would not happen. In terms of the reasons, there are varying reasons why we were unable to start the payments in April. Among them would be, yes, the need for us to do a check against the P45s, which is what was going to substantiate that someone had indeed been laid off and when. in terms of the indications that we have been hearing about the P45 not uploading. We know that there's one in particular where when we check the records, because what is happening once you try to upload is recorded, what we saw was that they had put in the information for maybe about 500 persons. The information was then deleted by them. And it was 6 days later before they went back and tried to upload again and proceeded to delete again.
Who is this? I'm not following this at all.
In terms of one of the entities in putting forward the P45.
Was trying to upload.
That is what the information from the system is giving us. It was deleted
but did you contact them and ask them if there was a difficulty with it?
No, so since we became aware, the Tax Administration Jamaica has been in contact with them. And to the best of my knowledge, they have now properly done the thing. But it is not that there was anything wrong with the system. It was deleted on their end. Prior to even that, quite a number had in fact uploaded. A lot of persons had uploaded their P45s, and we were able to do our checks that were required. We are, in fact, at the point of starting the payments. The payments are being done in batches. We have a batch for 12,265 that will be made this week.
But, all right, these persons that are going to be paid this week, just to clarify, are these payments for April or payments for May?
Could be April. Right,
Yep.
it would be for the ones that should have been in April.
Pardon?
April.
These are for April.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that going a step further, as I said, are you in contact with the GHT specifically with regard to this?
So they set
To the
cash.
problems? No, set and best.
So best.
Both have real problems.
Okay.
Are you in conversation with them as to the
Okay.
issues?
Okay, yes, there has been discussion with them, but again, the program was put forward with a certain set of conditions around it, around how we would operate it. This is with respect to the BES. The sector had discussions with the minister, requesting some adjustments to what we had outlined, and that has, to some extent, delayed payment on that side for the
FS,
best.
before I turn over to my colleagues, understand the difficulty I'm having. To my certain knowledge, there are members in this sector who are getting frustrated and a little upset about the challenges they have had with making this system work, and that it is made to appear that they are not attempting to do what needs to be done. Now, there will always be some do better than others, but they indicate they have been communicating regularly with the Ministry of Finance. My simple question is, if this is known, why is it that this information is not put out there so that there is clarity amongst all about what the challenges are and what is being done to fix them? Because otherwise, as I said before, there becomes a confusion. People start to distrust everything. It becomes a real problem, and we represent people, and when they can't get you at the Ministry of Finance, or they're having other difficulties, they're calling us, and we have a difficulty explaining, because it really seems that what should have been a good program is becoming, is actually getting a bad name because people are starting to get frustrated with it.
All right, Chair. We can put something out in terms of where we are, what is currently happening, when we're expecting to make the payments going forward. We can put something out now, but I would say that is not that the system overall has not worked. We have had requests for adjustments in how the program should operate, which we had to finalize what would be done before we started making any payments at all under the BES. On the set, we are now ready to make the payments. We're starting to make the payments. Part of the whole process was verifications. We had sent out to the employers a revised P45 and SO1, which they were asked to upload. We have been available for assistance if TAJ, if any was necessary with those revised. It wasn't any major revision forms. The persons have not, some persons, because some of them came in with no problems, but others had to be prompted. TAJ has been in contact with a number of people. We have been doing a lot of follow-up to try and ensure that from the employer side, what needed to be provided has been provided. We also, from the employee side, had to send back things for persons to check what it is they have submitted. As we indicated previously, there are some checks and balances. If your TRN and your name are not matching, then it's going to get bounced. We are not going to be able to do anything with it. So you get a message. So some of that as well. Your account number.
Yeah, but Evans, I'm saying to you, I have heard those individual issues, and that's where you need clarity and you need an appeals area where things can be corrected. I'm talking about fundamental issues. And as I said, I have a list of, and as I said, you have what I have. I give you an example. Another issue has arisen because companies are required to upload SO1 forms by the 14th of every month for payroll transaction in the prior month. This was done in April for March transactions, and since then, May for April. Surprisingly, workers started getting text notifications that they no longer qualified for the grant as they have been reemployed. You can imagine the further crisis of angry calls to companies demanding explanations. The Ministry of Finance could say that their system parameters they designed were incorrect. Workers' names and TRNs will arise on SO1s for all legitimate payroll activities for a prior period. However, they did not realize that this should not have been a disqualifying factor. I'm making the point, are you aware of these challenges?
Okay, so that particular one has been addressed.
When was that addressed?
Very recently, sir.
Like when?
That is why the payments are now ready to go out.
But that's the point I'm making. If these are the reasons for this happening, you have got to be open and transparent with the people and the workers. Otherwise, it is felt that the problem is elsewhere.
Okay.
All right, I have Member Dalrymple and Member Dunn, Member Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, FS. I just want to start by saying I concur with the Chairman that there are a number of issues. And really and truthfully, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It is an excellent system. I think the government has moved to assist. But there are hundreds of little glitches because you're dealing with a system. You're dealing with a nation that's not everybody is computer literate and technically savvy to get it done, and they are not able to speak with anybody. We're dealing with a system and machines, and so I have had to interject, and from where I sit, I have been fortunate that I can speak to someone and see if we can get some assistance, but it is very frustrating. But what I'm thinking, Chairman, is that because we recognize that there are so many glitches, and we do have the supplemental budget today, I am inviting the thought that we should have a session with the ministry to deal with these issues so that we too, as representatives of the people, can understand, and therefore if we understand, we will in fact be able to pass on. I really think that if we go down this route today, we're not going to be able to deal with the supplemental budget. So I would ask and invite you, Chairman, to let us think of a session, because the need is there and it is great. But we can't do it and have everybody outside.
And I do agree with you, and I make a suggestion on that. Member Dunn, yes, I do. Let us just hear the other members.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to make a similar point that today the substantive issue is the supplementary budget. And although this is a topic that we're all, as you mentioned before, very much interested in, that's the grant, what we're here about today is what I believe that we should stick to, and if we have the time, then we can move on.
Okay. Member Witter? Oh, sorry. Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst we agree that there are some problems from the ministry side of it, we also have to look at the fact that we have employers who, I wouldn't want to say unscrupulous, but they have not done what they are supposed to do or was supposed to do. For example, there are members in my constituency that you know are directly employed to the tourism sector. And I'll just read a letter, but I won't call the names.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So it said, in light of the situation highlighted in a memorandum dated the 18th of March 2020 from the Executive Director of all employees at such services regarding the adverse effect that the outbreak of coronavirus COVID-19 has had on the company's operation. This letter is to advise you that effective March 20th, 2020, you are being laid off from your position as customer service reservation officer. Mm-hmm. While we recognize the valued part played by our employer at this time, we must explore all other options, improving efficiency and whatever. So I go to the next. Let me go now to the income tax, new employee particulars, and it says date of leaving. Date of leaving is the 2nd of April 2020. So here is an employee who was laid off from the 18th of March, applied to the government of the day to get the assistant, was not able to get through because of
Member Clark.
And I don't want to use the word unscrupulous.
All right, but FS, you have anything to say about that? Because let me tell you, Member Clark, again, and this is where the problem lies. In this, that I did not touch all the points. It was pointed out, and FS, I would like you to clarify this, that how the P45 works is that it goes from a specific date to a specific date. So the P45 that you do for March would culminate either on the 2nd or the 9th of April. You could be laid off on the 18th, but the P45 submission is the 2nd to the 18th. So everybody who was laid off in that period got a date after the date that was set for them to get funding for the month of April. It was not a problem with the form or the employers doing the form. It was the system that was erroneous. Now, hold on, so I simply make the point. I may be wrong, I'm not technical, but is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay,
made an
please.
adjustment to the form.
No. Was an adjustment made after it was determined that this was a problem?
No. the form was adjusted when the program was announced, or even before the program was announced.
I'm just saying it within the
Mr. Chairman,
issues.
the point that I raise now is the information that is sent over to the ministry from the employee is to say that the employee was laid off on the 2nd of April, whilst they had given her a letter from the 18th.
So here what I would
March.
suggest, let me tell you what I would suggest that we could do. And I'm going to follow Member Dalrymple. I do have a few more persons. But let me just
finish, sir, and you can just what I suggest, and I implore of us, is to send one of our recommendations to Parliament to have a team put in place, just as how we have Mocha and others, that we have a team that will be out there. Their job is to make sure and investigate all of these matters. Because, Mr. Chairman, whether we like it or not, whether we want to say it or not, we have persons, employers, who are not making the employees return. And you find it so often when they want to get help from NHT and other agencies, they can't because they have not been making their returns. And they are told by the employers that, yes, your returns are being made.
Member Clark, you're absolutely correct. And the truth of the matter is that our responsibility is to the workers.
Exactly.
So where they are calling us and saying they have problems, it is our job to resolve it. Before I move to the other members, it would be my suggestion that we ask, once we've done the supplementary, that we ask the ministry and its team for a small team of us on this committee to meet with themselves and the leadership of the sector to clarify this as quickly as possible. I'm suggesting even this week, because the fact of the matter, there's turmoil, people are suffering out there. They want to know that their matters are addressed, and we as a committee, I think, have a duty to deal with it as quickly as possible. So it's my intention. I'm going to take the comments from the other members, but then I'll put it back to you to set a specific time and date. Member Vaz had wanted a specific. Member Vaz? You had wanted to say? Action.
I just wanted to know, or for you to take into consideration, it's something I asked already in Parliament, read the P45 for those employers who don't end up submitting. We don't want to penalize the employees for what they're not responsible for.
Exactly.
So what I'm asking is for, if nothing is yet put in place, if the ministry can put something in place, find a way where we can assist these particular employees. There's something we can discuss when we have that particular session that you just suggested.
So I'm back to the point I made earlier, that we will, I think, as a committee, have to insist that there be an appeals process in place so that all the cases can be looked at to ensure that those that are deserving of it get it. And not only that they get it, but they get all the months that they should get it. Those, in other words, because April has passed, they should still get April once they have qualified, but not take it out as a technicality. All right? Member Paulwell?
Yes, as you have agreed to return to this matter, I would just like, in preparation for that, if we could get a breakout of those parishes that have, for which compensation grant has been paid. I know that you have done them in parishes, but I certainly would like to know, as a member of Parliament for East Kingston, how much has been paid out in my constituency.
You're not talking about, you're talking about generally.
Yes, generally.
Including compassionate grant.
Yes,
oh,
absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's a broader picture. I think we were specifically now dealing with the said cash. All right, members. All right, so members. Yeah, Member Phillips. Sorry, I have Member Stewart and then Member Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I know you're going to be going back to the whole issue, as you rightly said, but just for some consideration to be given, as it relates to the compassionate grant, it was closed off suddenly, and we have been hearing talks that it will be reopened. We need to find out that I know that's out of your portfolio, madam, but has there been any provision made in this supplementary budget for compensation when it is reopened?
So the government has not indicated that it will be reopened.
Okay. Member Phillips?
Just a clarity though, because you had mentioned in the beginning about the three payments for the set cash. And it still stands that 3 payments will be made. Yes, all right. But and just coming back to, because I remember in our first sitting dealing with this program itself, the question that the member asked, Member Vaz asked about what will be done or what mechanism would be put in place for those employees who have made applications, but the companies, the employers, not doing the required or requisite submission that would follow to give them and I think the answer then was that the TAJ would basically do some follow-up calls to those companies. Now, my question is how many, seeing that we have come to a certain point of the opening and somewhat closing of the program itself, how many companies have not followed through with the required P45 form compared to the employees who have made submission?
Okay. Member, just to note, particularly for the set cash, in terms of applicants up to this morning, we had like 74,250. And in terms of employers who have not yet uploaded the P45 for those, that would be like about 36,000. So
a half.
Right, just a little, less than a half, has not yet uploaded. But the TAJ has in fact been reaching out to these people, because up to a couple of weeks ago, the number was actually less. So we are seeing more who are actually uploading. So that process will continue. I mean, to get you some sort of suasion to get the employers to, in fact, upload. It's rather unfortunate that we have to be exerting so much effort to the employer to get them to upload to assist the former employees. But nonetheless, we will continue to do it because we want to ensure that the employee, in fact, benefits. They are the intended beneficiaries and we want them to benefit. So if it means we have to go that extra to keep nudging them to submit the P45, we will do that through TAJ. We would want at this point to be suggesting an alternative method, because the P45 is really a critical bit of document to actually confirm that they were employed and have in fact been laid off, because any change means that you'll have to go and adjust or change your eligibility criteria and so on, which we don't want to probably get into a situation where you could get a moral hazard developing, where employers feel, okay, there's another way around this apart from just uploading the P45. We want them to do that, so we'll continue to reach out to them.
But is there then a cutoff point where you basically, a cutoff point so that you can close out the program? Yeah? Because is there going to be a cutoff point?
All right, so we don't have a cutoff point at this time, but will, at this point, we will, however, be reviewing what's happening, how quickly the TAJ contact has resulted in additional P45s coming in, and then determine whether or not.
No, and again, as was said, it is disappointing because you have asked the employees, and I imagine there are multiple reasons why companies have not followed through. But just in the same breath as when we were talking about the barbers and the hairdressers and those who you were even giving the time to be able to register, which were not able to. But these are persons are taking taxes from their salaries and not being able to follow through, and they have an obligation to these workers also. And we know the situation, Chairman. But I think it is really unfair to these employees too, because, I mean, outside of the glitches that you may have, but I am going to use the word reluctancy of some of these employers in trying to assist these workers who they have to lay off for some reason or the other is grossly unfair to these workers.
Right. Just another point on that. I think we may see some kind of change in mood and attitude with respect to that. The best cash, which are for entities in the tourism sector, and most of the people who have applied for the set cash are also workers in the tourism sector. One of the things that has been happening is that I suspect some of the employers were kind of in this kind of state of saying whether or not it's better for them to go the best cash and not have the employee applying for set cash. And in that instance, because of they were maybe deterring, that may have impacted the pace at which they were uploading P45. Now we finally have settled on certain issues with this sector, mainly the JHTA had been discussing with us in terms of the best cash. I think we finally were able to settle that over the last...
When did that happen?
Up to yesterday. We have not finished, right. Up to yesterday. Because I've been in discussion days and weeks with mainly the JHTA. So I think once we have settled those parameters for the best cash, then I think we're likely to see some better action.
What would cause, right, but again, there ought to be some urging or some penalty for those who because the government has put out this thing to help those who have been laid off. But just quickly, Chair, in the instances of persons working with a company, the company made it public that they are closing down their offices, their branches. All the employees made the application. Some have gotten a response to say, the company itself submitted its P45. Some have gotten a response, yes, you have been approved, and various messages sent. But then you have a few who have not been accepted. And I know of one case, a constituent of mine, who got back a message to say that she's otherwise employed elsewhere. But she was working with this company for a period of time, and they all submitted their application with her co-workers. What would cause that? And the second question is the issue of joint accounts. I know we brought it up in the sitting last week with the Minister of Finance. He said there were some issues, but you have persons who have joint accounts which have been denied or rejected. If we can address that, how is that being addressed also?
All right, so not aware of the joint account being rejected for the reason of a joint account. Again, the name on the account needs to match what they are
but it's a joint account.
No.
So my name would be on the account with my wife, but you decline me because...
The matter of the joint account, from my understanding, there's just one particular financial institution, which is a system issue in terms of how they treat with the joint accounts. Once we became aware of this, because as we said before, the payments are made, we send all the accounts to the financial institutions. Please validate these accounts. And those that are not validated, they would come back with sometimes some specific and sometimes some general reasons. So the particular institution where that is a challenge, we actually, Accountant General, had engaged them in discussion to see how can we specifically address those, because whether joint account or not, the person, truth is,
on the account.
Is on the account.
Yes.
So there should be no rejection, but it's not across the board within the financial institution, it's one particular institution based on how their system is set up. So we are in discussion with them to deal specifically with that matter. So we expect resolution of that.
And you will send out to those persons who are affected and advise them that it is being
which is
at.
the next thing, because they got a message that they have been rejected.
Exactly. So I'm just saying,
it needs
you
to
recognizing this issue, it needs to be so resolved. All right, members, I'm going to.
And I beg you, just look at the case, and I will discuss with you after.
On
the case where the person is employed to a company. Some of our co-workers have gotten messages. Her message was basically that she's employed elsewhere, so she is being rejected, when that is not the case.
Right. We are aware of some of those cases, not to say are employed elsewhere, but the may have got a message to say the records show that you are still employed. Well, I can tell you we have.
That's because of the SO1.
Because of the SO1. But as we speak right now, we are actually running some check on a significant number of those, and we expect by the end of today we'll be able to address those that have shown up with that particular issue that you mentioned, Member Phillips.
All right, members, I'm going to call it to a halt here. My suggestion is this: FS, I can't emphasize enough. There are many workers out there who are contacted every day about their concerns. And I think what was or should be a very positive program is now having some negative repercussions. There seems to be a slight difference of opinion as to whether all the glitches are worked out between you at the Ministry of Finance on one side and those in the industry at the other. I'm going to suggest, members, that we want to see this resolved by next week. In other words, whatever glitches should be there, if any, or whatever issues there are in the industry, if any, we want them resolved. What we really want is that the workers in the sector have some peace of mind about moving forward. So what I'm going to suggest is that if you could give us a fulsome report, certainly by Monday morning. I would like between now and Monday, if you can have a discussion further with the JHTA, and or better yet, members, I think what we should do is ask the umbrella body to issue or give us their comments as well. If it is that this issue can be resolved by next week, fine. If not, I suggest, members, that we invite those involved to a meeting next week just to resolve whatever issues might exist, if any. But what I'm getting at is, out there is real concern amongst the workers. We need to resolve it. And it resides between yourself at the Ministry of Finance and the employers in the sector. We don't want all the technicalities. We want it resolved and resolved properly in the best interests of the workers. And we need a time frame on it. If we can get that resolved by next week, Wednesday, fine. If not, I think we'd be forced to invite both yourselves back and maybe representatives from the sector to try and resolve it. Members, have I captured the sentiments? Are we in agreement with that? FSU, I mean, you agree with the direction?
Okay, sir. So we will prepare the fulsome report. To the best of my knowledge, we have at this point already resolved some of the issues. We will check and see.
If at the end of the day, all parties can agree that the issues are all resolved, then the committee can make its decision based on that. But give us lead time in which to make a determination whether or not it has been resolved sufficiently by next week, Wednesday. So if we can get that report either Friday or Monday, it would help. Ms. Bailey, from both parties. All right? Members, I'm going to now turn to the...
Chair, could I just want clarity on a question that was asked in terms of information being sought. I think Member Paul had asked for some information, but I'm not sure what he really wants when he mentioned
what they were asking was a demographic breakdown of the in other words, the persons who have received
I need to know as a
grants,
representative of the people,
what are the demographic?
How many persons in my constituency would have gotten compensation grant? Yes. And the reason for this...
I think that's the challenge now when we're requesting it by constituency as opposed to by parish.
But no, I have gotten, the reason why I have gotten the parish one, and I see where for the parish of Kingston, 59,000 people have benefited. We have, 69,000. That is quite a large number of people. And when you compare it with St. Andrew, which is, has a larger population, it's 41,000. So that has alerted my curiosity. And so I would like to know, if you want to restrict it to the parish of Kingston, what is the situation there with the 3 constituencies in Kingston?
Well, that is definitely, that's very interesting information. The extent to which we can break that down.
Right, we can provide by parish. We can provide by parish.
But we understand. But I think Member Powell's statement just now, when you consider to have that amount in Kingston versus St. Andrew,
yes, sir.
It starts because what then becomes a question. Look, in all these things we're doing, while agreeing that we understand, that we trust the integrity of all operatives involved, there is a reality that our job is one of oversight. And quite frankly, where you see something that makes you kind of question, one would have to wonder why. And in those cases, further information is obviously going to be needed.
All right, sir. So what we can provide is the information by parish. We could provide the number of applications received from each parish as well as the number already paid out. That is also relevant.
All right. I think, member, more and more we may need to have a discussion next week with those who are operating the system, because quite frankly, if you find some of this centralized in some areas, it's going to raise questions. It's going to raise questions. Quite frankly, everyone in here is going along. We are all in best of faith, but you start to question certain things when you hear them. So if you can, in that case, send us what information you have, Member Paul, you can then determine when we look at it whether or not we need to get more information with the guy. All right. Members, I now want to move to the agenda. I have a little difficulty, members, and I think I'd like to put it out to you. Yes, absolutely. Pardon? You'll hear what I have to say. I have a little difficulty, and I think members, I'd like you all to sort of pay attention to this and certainly get the advice of the FS and get the advice and how we proceed. Members, we all know that the Financial Administration and Audit Act was passed some years ago. As part of that act, we at the PAAC are included in the process of the supplementary budget so that we can ensure that the rules and regulations of the Financial Audit Act, that these things are followed carefully. There is a difficulty that I face with the supplementary budget as presented now, and I'd like us to just be clear. The Financial Administration and Audit Act in section 48C really speaks to a number of things. It speaks to 5, A to E, things that are your targets, and says that they subject to subsections 2 and 4, the minister shall take the appropriate measures. Briefly, the first is to attain a fiscal balance, right, as a percentage of GDP as at the end of financial year March 31st, 2018. The second, to reduce the public debt. This is section 48C(b). To reduce the public debt to 60% or less the gross domestic product by the end of the financial year ended March 31st, 2026. C is to deals with the reduction of the to get the ratio of wages. D, which is what affects us particularly here, to ensure that neither the Appropriations Act nor any supplementary estimates of revenue and expenditure for any financial year will cause any negative deviations from the fiscal balance to be obtained pursuant to paragraph A. And D, to ensure that no deviation is recorded in the notional account until the fiscal accounts of the financial year in question have been finalized. These are, by the Act, the targets that have to be met. For us to be able to deviate from these targets, which are entrenched in law FS, you have to have one of 4 issues, what they call the eventuality. A period of public disaster, which is A, as defined in the Constitution, a severe economic contraction, a financial sector crisis, C, and D, a public emergency within the meaning of Section 20 of the Constitution. Quite frankly, COVID probably covers all of them in one way, shape, or form. So we're not saying that that does not exist. Where we have a bit of a problem, I think the moral hazard that affects us, is Section 3 says, subsection applies where, in other words, these issues that allow us to make those changes. Subsection 2 applies where A, the Auditor General has validated in the prescribed manner that the estimated fiscal impact of the eventuality is equal to or greater than 1.5% of gross domestic product, and thereafter the Minister, having regard to the validation of the Auditor General, has, in accordance with subsection 4, made an order subject to affirmative resolution permitting the requirements to be suspended for an initial period and, as the case may require, for an extended period. It also indicates that for Section 2 to apply, the Planning Institute, the PIOJ, shall also send its report to the Minister and to the Auditor General with regards to this. I raise these, members, because our responsibility at the PAC is not only to look at the supplementary budget, but to determine whether the supplementary budget is properly before us. And I'm not certain, FS, that without the comments of the Auditor General or the Planning Institute, with regards, please let me finish.
Chairman, I'm not sure that you're being.
Please let me finish. Without them and without us being able to look at these, because what has happened is that there are two elements that are fundamentally missing. One, the minister has indicated that he'll be moving the fiscal balance from, I think it's 5.4 down to 3.5, is one, which changes the target, which is enshrined in law, and therefore we would need those figures checked by the Auditor General. And second, that this has to be approved by a resolution to Parliament. So my question is, what are the procedural plans? Is this properly before us with regards to following what is the Financial Administration and Audit Act?
Okay, sir. So we are in the process of making a submission to the Auditor General. The PIOJ would also be in the process of preparing their document. In terms of...
So, sorry, you're saying that you have asked the Auditor General?
No, I said we are in the process of preparing a submission to the Auditor General.
So this has not gone to the Auditor General yet?
It's not yet submitted.
And the Planning Authority?
They would also be looking at doing a preparation. But if I may, the supplementary that has been tabled relates to just this fiscal year, 2020-2021. While the Minister has indicated the likelihood that given the adjustment that is necessary for this year, that the debt to GDP target cannot be met within
say that the
debt to GDP target would not be met within the expected timeline. Really, we need to be looking at a medium term to fully determine that. So yes, for this fiscal year, we're representing a deviation from the indicated primary balance target, which is what we were saying would be required to meet the 2025-26. However, without the full medium term, we're not as yet able to determine that even though we have deviated for this year, that we are not able, with other adjustments, to meet the legislated target. It's likely, but it is not. You would need it. We have not tabled another medium term as we had done with the budget. It is only.
No, but I'm just saying you have placed a supplementary budget, which by Section D of the Act says to ensure that neither the Appropriations Act or any supplementary estimates of revenue and expenditure for any financial year will cause any negative deviations from the fiscal balance to be attained pursuant to the paragraph. And it then goes on to say the steps to be taken to allow that to happen. And I'm making the point that we have tabled a budget which has these negative deviations, but the steps have not been taken. And I'm just making the point, are we in this position being asked to examine a budget which is improperly before us? Which is the reason we were asked, that's why PAAC is in effect.
Okay,
here.
So I think we would need to have some deliberation on that before I give you a definitive response on that question. However, we are in the process of making a submission to the Auditor General.
Chairman, yes, I think this is a fundamental issue, and it has to be settled before the work of the PAAC can continue to examine this first supplementary estimates. The law requires that if you are going to be deviating from the assumptions of this year's budget or any budget, then it requires an amendment of the law to allow for that. Further, Chairman, you'll recall the debacle this year when it was noted that the budget was being presented without the prior endorsement of the Auditor General in relation to her role under the fiscal responsibility law and certain assumptions that were being made. And it did create quite, for us, a departure from what has been established practice, guided by the law, that you get the endorsement of the Auditor General before Parliament really ought to examine the budget. What we have before us now is not the usual supplementary estimates. In fact, it is unprecedented to have the first supplementary estimates so early in the financial year. But what we have, Chairman, is pretty much a new budget. And yes, it is as a result of the crisis. But it doesn't mean that you can depart from the law. Indeed, the Minister of Finance in 2014, in commenting on the law, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, believed then that the provisions should be incorporated into our Constitution. That's how firmly he believed in those provisions. So we can't willy-nilly today start to examine what really is a new budget for fiscal 2020-21 in breach of the rules. So it would be inappropriate, Chairman, for you to continue with these discussions when the letter hasn't even been sent yet to the Auditor General.
Well, let me say this, FS. Let me say this, and I speak for myself because I really haven't had consultation. Look, I think our committee, we want to help. We want to do everything possible. If it means even meeting on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, anything you all want. But part of why we were entrenched in the fiscal framework was because we were to ensure that that every administration, every Minister of Finance, that everybody follows very plain, transparent, open rules that are there. So I just say to you, we want to do everything possible to help. And secondly, we have known about this budget when we did the supplementary budget in March on short notice, the last supplementary. The Minister of Finance indicated to me right in this house that within the first few weeks of April we were going to have a budget. I went to him in April, he said no, he's putting it off. We have known of this budget for some time. So it's not like it's a surprise budget. But we have to understand that what you have done is this is the first time since Jamaica was put on this track, 6-7 years ago, where we know we're heading towards a direction where in 2026 we are going to be 60% of GDP. It's the first time now that we're deviating from that. And none of us in here will disagree that there isn't good cause for the changes that are being made. But entrenched in this law were rules put in place to ensure that that we always did things for the right way and that it was checked. And something of this magnitude, which is going to put back Jamaica's target by 2 years, justified as it may be, must come under the scrutiny of the Auditor General, whose job it is to check those figures to ensure that the assumptions you make are right, because you are now going to entrench those into the law. And secondly, it must be advised by the Planning Institute as well. These things were placed in not just a document, but in the law of the land. So I'm saying to you, we need some advice. It would have been good if we had gotten it here before. And I'm suggesting that if we can quickly even adjourn and seek the advice of the Solicitor General and find out whether we are advised to move forward. If she so agrees, no problem. But I think that we may be following a pursuit of infutility. If we move ahead, and as I said, you're moving on assumptions that have not been verified by the Auditor General. So that would be my suggestion or recommendation, committee.
Go ahead.
Chairman, may I be permitted to ask the FS a question?
To ask
the FS a question.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. FS, has the issue arisen before where you advised this committee that it was not necessary to get the opinion of the Auditor General in relation to supplementary estimates?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I'm sorry?
No.
I'm going to remind you that on the, not in the last, it's not the third quarter, I think it was before then. Yeah, you were asked generally as to whether it was necessary to get the opinion of the Auditor General in relation to supplementary estimates, and your answer then was no. Do you agree?
That's correct.
So, would you also agree that this is a supplementary estimate which you have before you?
Exactly. So what's the problem?
So you would also agree in those circumstances that it is not necessary, based on the advice you gave this committee, that it is absolutely not necessary to have any opinion expressed by the Auditor General?
Okay, so on this one, I am not going to give you
I'm
that
sorry?
position. I cannot give you that position at this time.
Could you advise us as to why it is that you can't provide the opinion now?
Given that this particular supplementary is suggesting a deviation from program, then we need to take other aspects of the law into consideration. Therefore, I would say that we would need to get some legal opinion on this. Just before I stop, just to indicate that earlier in the year, when the minister indicated that he would need to do a supplementary, even though we had a suspicion that we may need to suspend the rules, it would not yet have been clear as to what the required level of adjustment was. Now that we have done the supplementary and we are currently indicating a 1.9% of GDP deviation, then yes, it would suggest that a suspension is required. But this is just at this point a suspension. In terms of amendment of the law, that would not as yet be necessary, because that comes when you have determined that you cannot get back on a track in the later years to meet the targeted legislation.
So that determination has been made?
Microphone.
That determination has been made that we can either get back or not get back?
All right, so the minister would have given an indication when he tabled the supplement.
Sorry?
The minister would have given an indication when he did the tabling that.
And is it the
no,
minister?
please, Member Campbell, let her finish, please. Go ahead.
That it was unlikely that we would be able to meet the
sorry, repeat.
current.
Could you repeat?
The minister would have indicated when he tabled the possibility that we are unlikely to meet the targeted debt to GDP legislation in 2025-2026, given the parameters that he was looking at. If those parameters are changed, if there are agreements to change those parameters, then there is a possibility you can meet it, but that needs to be examined, and then you determine whether you make the adjustment or leave it.
Member Powell.
Chairman, I'm so happy that the FS has responded that way because it's the correct way. And I'm surprised. I'm looking now at the minister's presentation in Parliament, and he didn't avert to this very fundamental issue. What we are witnessing here, Chairman, is pretty much a new budget with new assumptions. And whereas before, when you have supplementary estimates, it's pretty much a formal process. We give it stamp of approval, and then it goes down. You have a standing finance committee that meets for half an hour. This is not so. This is going to require, as a representative of the people, that the standing finance committee will have to spend some time in some detail looking at these line items all over again. The exercise we did Yes. Chairman, the submission I'm making is that the repercussion from this understanding that the FS has certainly grasped is that we as members of Parliament will have to consider this a new budgetary exercise, looking at the various line items in the same kind of detailed way that we would have done some time ago in February. Yes, it is due to the pandemic, but there are rules, there are laws that we have to adhere to. And I think we will have to take a break to get better advice.
Yes, Member Witter.
I just want to add my little voice here. We are presented here this morning with a supplementary estimates 2020-21, and that is what we are looking at. I would love to ask the question of the FS. Why should we not treat it as such? That's the question I want to ask. This is what we are presented with here today. Why are we not to treat it as such? And where in the law that you will find those arguments that we are not to treat it as what is presented before us today? We are presented with a supplementary estimate.
I think FS kind of answered the same question already.
No, I need to know
no,
why.
Member Witt, I think Member Campbell had asked the same question.
But we have not gotten an answer. Why should we not treat it as such?
Simply because the law as it is now doesn't allow you to.
The law allow us to go to the supplementary without the consideration of the Auditor General.
No.
Yes, that's what she said in the last meeting.
Member Witter.
When it was asked
Member Witter, please. Just what I think, FS, correct me if I'm wrong, what we have here is these estimates, the supplementary that have been laid before us now in section 48C of our law, 48C section D.
Yes.
It says that the minister shall take appropriate measures to ensure that neither the Appropriations Act nor any supplementary estimates of revenue and expenditure for any financial year will cause any negative deviations from the fiscal balance to be attained pursuant to paragraph A. So basically what has happened is that this supplementary budget that we're putting here is going to put Jamaica in a position where this law has indicated that we must reach a debt to GDP by 2025, 26. It is now going to be set back 2 years.
Right.
It indicates the conditions by which you can do that, and in other
just
words,
have
a national disaster.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
But
what are the
it then
conditions?
says to be able to do it, it has to be, all your figures must be checked and a report must be given by the Auditor General before this is done. So we're simply saying that we as a parliament, we are following certain rules and regulations. We need to find out whether or not, because we are now looking at a supplementary budget that does harm to our laws without the requisite steps being taken. So all we're doing is, I would suggest now, members, if we could probably take an adjournment for 15 minutes, and what we could do is have a discussion maybe with the, I think necessarily the Minister of Finance and the Solicitor General, and just get some advice as to how we should proceed. What it would entail, because we do have civil servants who are asked to come, if we could push it back by an hour and a half or an hour so that they don't have to stay here during that period of time, it would be considerate to them. So I would at the same time ask that we do that. But that before we move forward, we as a committee have to ensure that we are following the right path, and we must be so guided. So I'm going to ask that the meeting be adjourned for, meeting be suspended for a short period to enable us to do some consultations. All in favor? Thank you, members. Meeting suspended. Let's see.
You never put up a fight, no. Paradise come, just know me like we do. We never had to say a word, not a sound. Silence, you baby. You never put up a fight, no. Paradise come, you just know me like we do. We never had to say a word, not a sound. Silence. You never put up a fight, no. You nobody put up a fight, no. Paradise Plum, and keep it locked to PBCJ. This is your girl, Naomi Cowan.
Hey! Did you miss the broadcast of Telethon Jamaica Together We Stand? Make a donation. Join us right here on Monday, May 25 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. for highlights of Telethon Jamaica Together We Stand. This will give you yet another chance to join some of Jamaica's leading artists and personalities in making a donation towards the purchase of urgently needed personal protective equipment for healthcare and frontline workers. That's highlights of Telethon Jamaica Together We Stand, right here on this channel on Monday, May 25 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Together We Stand in support of our frontline workers. Tune in and make your donation.
Watch yourself online, that's what my crew say. Make it a new day. I'm reminded by the Broadcasting Commission. We the BCJ. What if it was your friend in the mix? What if it was your sis in the pit? What if you want a terrorist watch list? What if? Suppose that one. What you gonna do? Don't like, don't comment, don't click. Report it, block it, don't make it stick. Don't trust everybody on the internet. Use it to step up your intellect. So online you have to be safe too. Don't believe the rumors or the fake news. Don't go everywhere they try to take you. Protect the kids or they find a way through. What if it was your friend in the mix? What if it was your sis in the pit? What if you want a terrorist watch list? What if? Suppose that go on. What if? Wait up, free.
Reduce your risk of viral illness.